we are right on the precipice of a whole new way of thinking about success. So Foundation for Young Australians, which is like the largest foundation that invests in thinking about young people and what's happening for them now, but also in the future. Thousands of students, after paying back the $20, which was the $20 BOSS loan, then went on to make profit, which they always donated to their school or their community. Entrepreneurship is actually a muscle that you just need to practice and hone. I mean, Bitcoin's going to become a solution for lots of things, right? And not having to go through central agencies or all of those things is very, very, very powerful.
Going back to the $20 BOSS idea, I think that would be such a cool project to do specifically with BTC.
I'm going to have to add to my currencies of life. I'm going to have to say, love, power, and Bitcoin.
Alrighty, welcome to Get Off Zero. We've got a very special guest today. But before we jump in, if you can, jump onto getoffzeropod.com and there's a whole bunch of links there, but I've put up some new links for people to check out. So the Spotify links and the Fountain app, so you can actually listen to this live on the Lightning Network, which is really cool. So Jan Owen's our guest today, and she is an awesome lady that I've known for years, and I feel like we're always kind of like ships in the night at conferences, like I am with so many people, but we're always kind of like, oh, awesome, we'll have to catch up soon, and we never get a chance to sit down and chat properly. So I was more excited just to hang out with you and have a chat today than do a podcast. So I'm super excited, but yeah, tell us a bit about yourself, Jan, if you can, and your background with FYA and what you're working on now and all the cool stuff that you've been doing and doing at the moment, if you could.
Hi, Kieran. Thank you. Well, I'm coming to you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people and Boonwurrung nations of the Kulin Nation in Melbourne. And yeah, there's been a lot going on, isn't there? There's been a huge amount going on, particularly in education and learning. So I've been, over the last few years, since I left Foundation for Young Australians, where we did, I guess, some of that really seminal work on what the future of work for young people might look like, but also that took us back to education, of course, as it always does. So how might we prepare young people for a really different and rapidly changing world? And then since then, I've had this fantastic opportunity just to work with a bunch of different organisations, one being Learning Creates Australia, that we set up inside FYA, the Foundation for Young Australians, and then have kind of taken out, looking at what does success genuinely mean in education and learning? And if you didn't have the kind of high stakes testing or what I call the cliff, what would you have instead? What would you put in place for students that would really tell us and tell them what they know and can do?
Oh,
and how
that
they
sounds
might
interesting.
represent themselves sort of in the world better. Yeah.
So is that them sort of rating themselves and grading themselves? Is that the idea, rather than?
Well, a bunch of different modalities, but part of it is definitely self-assessment. But part of it is also through doing, inquiry-based learning projects or any other numbers of ways of presenting your learning. There's different ways of then assessing that, obviously, because if you're not just doing high-stakes tests as your only way of assessing what some people know, then there's lots of ways that you can present yourself. And there's then great ways to assess that. I guess the challenge, and this is the design challenge that we're working into now and really leaning into, is that how do you ensure that is, whatever that new way of assessing and recognizing and validating and verifying what young people know and can do is sort of equitable, so that you can't kind of game the system because you have some special extra superpower or access to some body or some system that enables you to kind of inequitably get ahead of someone else. So that's the challenge and the design question, but it's brilliant. And I feel incredibly pleased that in a very short time, and I think this is one of the great outcomes of COVID, Kieran, is that we've been able to get to this place. Like we are right on the precipice of a kind of a whole new way of thinking about success and how we demonstrate success. In
Absolutely, and new learning as well. Obviously, like I think for all the negatives from the lockdowns and COVID and everything, I think the positive is stuff like this, right? Like it's just natural now to be doing Zooms every day. Students are used to it. Like I ran a class this morning, like with students in at Chisholm. It was really cool actually. Like cybersecurity grads going through a Bitcoin class. I was in my element, but yeah, like I didn't have to leave the house to do that, and that would have been kind of weird before COVID. So I think you're totally right with that. And I think in terms of like metrics and sort of self-reviewing as well, I think that's changed as well. I think, like, obviously, I think there is the negatives, like there is people sort of afraid to leave their house now and all that sort of stuff. But I think maybe the good kind of outweighs the bad a little bit, like in terms of progression towards a smaller world, really. Because like even doing podcasting, you can just chat to people on the other side of the world, as long as you get your times right. My big frustration at the moment has been daylight saving time. I think we need to abolish that.
Doesn't it kill you, because everybody goes in it together? So one minute you're like, yes, I'm really happy to talk to you at your 6 p.m. and my 9 a.m. or the other way around.
Yep.
And then daylight saving comes and suddenly it's like, no, there's only midnight or 3 a.m.
Yep.
How does that happen? So like, how does the whole thing turn upside down so quickly around the world? It's so bizarre.
It's nuts.
So yeah, daylight saving is very tricky.
It's a killer.
No doubt.
I think we need just one internet time, and that's it.
One internet time.
So it's just, if it's 4 o'clock, it's 4 o'clock wherever it is in the world.
That's so
it.
Great. One internet time. I love that.
So just to rewind a little bit, if we could, just going into FYA, because people listening to this might not know what that is. There's people actually looking at the metrics. The majority of listeners that I've had for this podcast and the previous one have been from Argentina. I don't know why, but yeah, that's where
hello, Argentina.
I know, it's so cool.
Awesome. Very
so
cool.
they might not know what like the New Work Order report was, or FYA. Could you get into that? Because I think it's really important.
Yeah. So we were thinking Foundation for Young Australians, which is like the kind of largest foundation that really sort of invests in thinking about definitely about sort of young people and what's happening for them now, but also we decided to focus really on the future, and we did that in sort of two ways. One was backing young people, so had a very large program supporting young social entrepreneurs, which we called young social pioneers. So they were kind of 18 to 28-year-olds with great ideas to how to change the world and kind of social change agents. And then a very big program, like 60,000 students in schools doing entrepreneurship. And there was a very big challenge, which you know about, Kieran, called $20 Boss, which was huge. And lots of students got into this program where you got $20 for one school term. And in that term, you had to set up a business for people, profit, purpose, planet. And you did that in teams. There was always a hustler, a hacker, and what's the third one? Hustler, hacker, and
I've forgotten.
Whatever the other one was, the tech. No, that was
Technical.
the hacker.
No, it'll be the hacker. Yeah.
Anyway, hustler, hacker, and something else. And then they were always
businessman,
in teams.
business person,
the
maybe.
Business, somebody there. But it was started with H, which I've now literally has left me. And in those teams, we saw the most remarkable results, because these were like 12 to 15, 16-year-olds, and they would. Number one, they would always fall really quickly into what sort of their propensity or their sort of intense interest was. They always created something that would be of benefit for their own lived situation and their community and their school and other young people. They were very, very diverse in the sort of businesses that they set up. 99% of the students paid back the $20. Thousands and thousands and thousands of students after paying back the $20, which was the $20 boss loan, then went on to make profit, which they always donated to their school or their community.
Brilliant.
So we just saw the most ridiculous trend lines in how young people getting these skills of entrepreneurship, but linked to sort of purpose and planet and profit, was such a powerful model. So FIA really was very focused on that kind of entrepreneurial. And then we did a lot of research, which is what was the future of work, or the new work order research on, okay, what's coming? What might young people be facing, and how can we make sure that we prepare and equip them adequately? And so there was a series of 6 or 7 reports over about that same period of time, for 6 years, where we mapped out in kind of real detail, used big data analytics that hadn't been tracked before, like looked at 4.6 million job advertisements to find out what skills employers were asking for of new graduates. Looked at 12 million jobs across Australia to see not what the job titles were, but what the skill and capability types that were being sought by employers, and started to bring kind of the demand and the supply side together for the first time and have this sort of conversation. So what is demanding out there in that entire world of work? And then what do students need to be doing? And therefore, what should schools and educators be doing as well to help students? So those reports had about a 50 million reach. They got picked up by the OECD, the World Economic Forum. And in fact, in Argentina, there were definitely people who were downloading those reports. So all over the world, there were people using these reports to, and that was our idea. Our idea was, yes, there were some policy shifts we wanted to see, and we were definitely lobbying and advocating, but we also wanted to get information directly into the hands of students, parents, and educators.
Yeah, so cool. I think the metrics that came out of that were just so fascinating to see, like, where the trends are going, and no one else was doing it like anywhere in the world. So it's like, it's still referenced a lot today. What year was that? That was like 20.
We started in 2015. Yeah, we put out a report actually that was about, why we needed to invest in young people. Australia's this ageing population, and unless we ensured that our tax base was shored up, we would be in real trouble. We would never be able to pay the health bills that were coming. And also, we've spent many decades, as everyone knows, in Australia at least, that we're extraction of resources out of the ground and selling them to anyone who'll buy them. And everyone could see that was coming to an end, and that our actual best asset would be our people and our knowledge. And that means particularly a massive investment in children and young people, so that, as the future kind of knowledge centre of a country that needed to shift from, previous to that, we had this fantastic term, which was we thrived off the sheep's back. And then we went into resources and mining, which isn't going anywhere. I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of mining, and certainly in renewables, there's still a lot of natural resources we have in Australia. But I think this emphasis towards the next iteration, the 21st century, would be definitely about our know-how and our smarts, and that was very important.
Green mining, I think that's something that's really important to me as well. So specifically Bitcoin green mining. So like there's a really cool there's a bunch of cool stories around that, but my favorite actually is from El Salvador. So I don't know if you've been following what's going on there with them basically making Bitcoin legal tender. I've got some friends there actually this week. I was meant to go over there, but I've had too much on. But it's a big conference on, and basically what the president's done is created universal basic income for everybody there. Yeah. And he's doing it through Bitcoin miners powered by a volcano. It's incredible. So he's doing universal basic income, over proof of work powered by a volcano. So completely green. It's all self-contained by this like thermal energy from this
Wow.
This amazing volcano. They're going up to visit it, so I'm so jealous. I'm really really keen to get over there and check it all out. But that's like that's the future, right? So like
amazing.
you have these natural resources, so he's harnessing that to help his, and it's you see that GDP, it's just gone like that since. And there's like listening to people living there. I've interviewed people living there as well. Actually, one of the people from Amber's moved over there. But
wow.
The violent streets people used to go down now are walking around with mobile phones like it's not a big deal. And this is in the space of like a year. And it all started, you'd probably appreciate it more than anyone. It started with some educators that actually went in from the States. They went down and wanted to create a circular economy. So they literally just paid students to stay in school rather than join a gang. So they did it at one school. It's called Bitcoin Beach. Did it at one school, paid these students, and then upskilled them, leapfrogged any other like computers or internet connectivity. So it's all just mobile phones, so smartphones, using software from Australia called Wallet of Satoshi for the most part. So that's the Lightning Network. Set up all the vendors to accept Bitcoin, and then started this circular economy. And then the weirdest thing happened, like all these like gangsters from these gangs, because they all have siblings, were like, can you do this at this school and this school? And it kind of went up the coast, all these schools, until it got to the president, and now the whole country is like on its way up.
It's going to be like a Bitcoin educated country.
It is. And they're doing I think they've got the first accredited course as well that you can actually do, which I'm trying to do that in Australia as well. So I'm trying to teach myself how to do an accredited course for that, which is cool. It kind of sucks that I think like it has to be a third world country that is like a pain point before we can onboard people. But so many cool stories. And another one's actually out of Central Africa, and this is one that's just incredible. So they've had a big influx of BTC use there, and same software actually. So there's all videos of this Australian software. It's Wallet of Satoshi being used there. But they did an experiment. I really want to get a hold of Sagata Mitra to tell him this story, because I reckon he would love it. Basically, a group of kids, 10 to 12 years old. They gave them all like a paycheck, a similar sort of thing. They paid them and created a circular economy, and said, "You guys can buy whatever you want, and we're just going to keep paying you." So it's not for doing anything. This is just your money. Yeah. So they've done that, and then as kids would do, they went and bought lollies and nonsense for a couple of weeks, and then they were going to intervene. They thought, "Nah, we'll just see what happens." So they documented the whole thing. About 3 weeks goes past, 4 weeks goes past, about a month goes past, and then they start buying healthy food, and then they start buying things that you would need for your family and that sort of thing. Yeah. Another couple of weeks go past, and the kids on their own figured out, if we pool our Bitcoin together, pool our resources together, we can buy in bulk, and then we can save more money between us. Yes. They did that on their own. Now, I don't know about you, but most Australian kids do not save money. They spend, right? But these kids learn that on their own just through the power of the network. So it's amazing what's happening. But
you know why I love that story? Because it does feel like the next generation of $20 boss, because all those behaviors were really present there, like unexpected behaviors. Like they did save their money. Like kids would save they would go and pick stuff off the side of the street and save their $20 till right at the end, and then sell what they'd recycled or upcycled from all the stuff they found in their suburb at the market, like at the biggest market day in their suburb, and save the $20 right to the end to go and get that stall. That's right. It's exactly that. It's very, very clever, smart. And they would have done exactly the same with Bitcoin, I reckon. In fact, that would be, if that was still running that program, which it's not, that's what should be.
Absolutely. Well, we did a mini version of that at Warana. So the $20 bus we did with Satoshis and the kids.
Oh, great. Great,
did their
great, great.
own projects. A little bit harder with primary school kids, but they did some cool
Yeah.
stuff like web development. In the end, I don't think anyone gave any Bitcoin back. It was basically just have
No.
something and start a business.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but no, it's still like the premise was
It's
really,
still the
really cool.
same. It's the same kind of premise. It's amazing. It's really good. And the other thing is that what we know about, which is why it's so good and so essential to do this stuff very early, because the fear factor is very minimal in children, and the fail fast propensity is very high. So this is why we always said, entrepreneurship is actually a muscle that you just need to practice and hone and kind of get and build strength in it. And so whatever it is, however many times you fail, it's fine. It's $20. It doesn't matter. That whole idea is so powerful, and it must be done with children. Like, it's just so much easier. And
it is. And new concepts are easier as well. Like you're saying, like they're not afraid to learn new stuff. Whereas sort of people older have got preconceptions about the world and how things work, and it is a lot harder. So you're right. Yeah, bang on. So moving along, that your work with that is just amazing, and I think there's so many people that have benefited from that and continue to. So it's a really cool open source template for people to follow along. I'll put the in the show notes a link to everything so that people can read. So it was a little while ago. God, when was the last time I saw you? I think it was at Peter Hutton's event, and it was the fundraiser
Future Schools.
For the Future School. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about the Future School project and sort of how that came about, and where it's at now?
So Future Schools is a project which is, again, all about how might we do school differently, and what would happen if in the 21st century, when we all have agency in our lives, and you just gave 20 examples, Kieran. Plus we're walking around with computers that are at the highest, level that you can get in your hand at the moment. Every kid can have them. There's 1-year-olds walking around with iPads, playing more than listening to Baby Shark. There's a lot of stuff going on all the time. So we are just extensions. This technology is extension of us. So, it does cause you to think, what the hell is school for? And so the whole idea of Future School was like, what the hell is school for? And how could it be done differently? Yes, the learning, which I've just talked about before. So how might you measure success in learning? What are the 20 different million ways that you can learn today? How does technology enhance that, complement that? So all that's going on, and that's why we have EdTech conferences, etc. But another part of it was in place. What could you do differently? And so the Future School idea was very much about put the learner at the centre and their own self-created learning journey, which of course is also mapped to what they need to be learning from a kind of a system point of view, and in whatever country that you're in. But how do you centre the learner and create the journey that's personalised around them? And so Future Schools was really about us doing that and using infrastructure differently, using the built environment differently, seeing school as actually every single building in your city, every single building in your suburb, not just some that have got school written on the outside, utilising workplaces and work environments in a very, very different way to blend and create just these very porous boundaries between what is so-called school and that kind of captive time of your life, which is 13 years in Australia, mostly for most people. But how do you transform that to be, that's a part of my life where I was learning in this particular different way, in this particular context, but it was not completely alien to every other part of my life, whether what I was doing out of school in the garage with my garage band, or what I was doing with my market, or what I was doing with my Bitcoin on the weekend, or what I was doing with my drone, that these things were not separate to another life and a kind of alien life. So that's what the Future Schools experiment is, and we've just moved to start to look at a couple of sites where we might that have really lend themselves to being kind of these more open source sites in communities and then online. We have some quite radical ideas that we want to test, Karen, like schools open 24/7. So you can go to school at any time of the day or night, and there will be somebody there.
Sorry to cut you off with that one. I was on I forget what TV show it was, up in Sydney, panel discussion one. Anyway, I was on with some kids, and there's like a short clip that's been taken out of context a bunch of times online.
Really?
Where I say, oh, we got a 24/7 learning space. It's fantastic in Minecraft. And all these people have taken that to mean that the kids are on their screens 24/7. It's like, no. You've got access to learning 24/7. Yes. They don't care. Yes. So I love that. I love that there's a physical space for that. So cool.
Yes, exactly. And also a digital space, right? So same. Mm-hmm. So that obviously, things that you know a lot about and lots of people listening, I guess, like self-paced learning, which is definitely the new way of learning. And then I think we wanted to kind of, again, do this blend of don't wait to some magical moment where you go and, again, engage in your passions and interests in kind of the real world and in the real world of work. Again, how do you make that just much more blended so that you don't get future shock when you leave school, or you don't sort of also have to think that these things are blocks of time. Like I did a block of time in primary and I did a block of time in high school and then I did a block of time in further education and then I went to work. Like that is just such a crazy waste of time and crazy use of time. It's gross. It's actually shocking. So we're trying to solve for that, and really what we're trying to do, Kieran, I think, is come up with kind of a demonstration project that really could be replicated in other places, and also showcase to the education system and learning system that here's a way that you could do this really differently. And we've got examples of that in Australia and lots around the world, but I would still call them points of light rather than the norm. And I think we need to get to that tipping point where there's a lot of points of light that then become the norm and the system moves as a result.
It is, you're right. And there's so many parents and students hungry for a dare I say, critical thinking system.
Yeah.
But it's something where you're not sitting in a room for 8 hours or 6 hours a day with someone. With in a lot of countries it is 8 hours a day with someone at the front of the room and sitting in rows. Those days are gone. That's not how people learn anymore. Yeah. I got an email this morning from a parent in Egypt who saw a video of myself and Seth, who was one of the students from Rana, on what was it, CNA, which is like the Asian news network, and it was about like his learning journey and their move from Singapore to our school and everything. And she was like, "Oh, do you do tutoring?" I'm like, how did you find me? So she's gone out of her way to find a different system. So you're right. If we could have an organization and a physical building, I still think a physical building is really important. As a template, like an open source template for other people to copy, I think that it would be magic.
Yeah.
So what do you see as like what's sort of stopping it from happening today? Like what's in the way of the roadmap, would you say?
That's I'd love to hear what you think about that. I think what's stopping it, I think what has been stopping it is this perception about what school is, that it's this place where you go and, your head gets opened, peeled back, and knowledge gets dumped in. And then you have this knowledge and then you go out in the world. That's one stream of thinking. The other stream of thinking is that school's a place where you kind of learn all these sort of social skills, but nobody's really clear what they are. And then when those social skills are disrupted with, massive mental health crises or issues, nobody knows what to do anyway. So all of the kind of, and of course that knowledge piece is rubbish because you just go onto Google and find out anything that you need. You can also get Google now to write any essay that you could want about anything in the world. So obviously that's another reason that high stakes testing just becomes a crazy idea. So I think all these ideas that we've had, which 100% served us, I'm not saying that they served us in the past, but because we didn't move, Kieran, when we could have, and I would say particularly at the even 22 years ago, even the beginning of the 20th century, let's be kind, even 22 years ago we didn't move. Now we actually have a system that's broken and in crisis. If we had moved back in 1999 even, and by the way, people were calling on this stuff way before then, but even 22 years ago, because think how much the world has changed in that time, how incredible it would have been to have an education system that was in step with that change. But in fact, we've still got a 20th century education system.
Factory model.
Yeah,
100%. Would you say it's in Victoria? I know there's a lot of compliance. Do you think that kind of gets in the way of creating like a new school such as this?
Well, what do you think about compliance? I always think of compliance as two things. Number one, it's a risk management strategy, firstly and foremost. Because if we find out that, for instance, we could assess and measure and validate and verify student success really, really differently, but it would take a different kind of approach, and then you'd have to relax some of your compliance, or you'd have to at least revisit it. That's a big risk. And so there is that compliance is about risk management as much as anything. It's not actually about equity, and the reason I can say that is that the system is inequitable. We've got the fourth most inequitable system in the world. We're one of the few countries in the world left with a kind of an ATAR system that ranks you as you leave school, like a league table. I mean, so we are genuinely out of step in Australia, at least now, compared to other parts of the world. So, what does that tell you?
I've always wondered, like, who came up with that idea to rank children and put a number on their head. Like, what Nazi came up with that crazy idea? Like, it's horrendous. Well, like, it doesn't help anybody.
It doesn't help anybody. All it does is divide. It's very divisive, and it also is very debilitating to young people. I was one of those kids because I was very entrepreneurial and a kind of autodidact, and I have one of my children is like that. So I saw an intergenerational play of this, which was very disturbing. And so I failed at everything at school. Like literally, I mean, I didn't fail at everything. I failed at lots and lots and lots of things. And I particularly failed at that last hurdle, which was the ATAR, as did my son. And I have to say, thank goodness I could say to him, and nobody said this to me, by the way, so I had to, be in therapy for the next 100 years. But I could say to him, Alex, you have not failed the education system. The education system has failed you.
Failed you. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that was a game changer. And he has been fine, 100% fine, because he really understood that at a really kind of existential level.
That's brilliant. That's really brilliant. Yeah. Well, and what a good mum, really. Like how many mums are out there doing that? Like who have no idea. They just think, oh, this metric means something.
Yeah,
and
my
it's
kids
absolutely
know, my
meaningless.
kids no good, or my kids know, like, and they've now done all that. And the other thing is we've done it all now, right? We've now looked at all the data. Basically, most people who go to university, half of them don't go with an ATAR now, number one. Number two, those with the highest ATARs actually struggle the most at university. So, on and on and on. Now the data's pouring out that validates this. But we still have this mindset because we are creatures that are fixated on the kind of mindsets that we have been given from a very, very, very young age. And unless we genuinely disrupt those neural pathways, it's very hard to get new ideas in there. But we've had this mindset for many, 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 many decades in this country about that particular ranking and that particular idea. And that, somebody even said as late as this week, that, TAFE, which is our tertiary and vocational education, which of course is highly regarded in countries all through Europe. And in fact, you would go to vocational education before you would go to university. So it's a highly regarded pathway. In this country, it's still said, they're for the lost cause kids. That was actually said at a conference like 2 days ago.
Whoa, you're kidding me. God, do you want to out who said that?
No, because it's a held view.
Man.
It's a widely held view.
That's gross. Oh my goodness. Well, we got to change that as well. I think, so we had students, cybersecurity grads working with us doing placement at my school. They were wonderful and really switched on. And I did both. So I did the first cybersecurity class in Australia.
Amazing.
Because it was available at TAFE years ago, and it was fantastic. And then I went on to uni, and I would rate the cybersecurity class at TAFE way higher because it was hands-on. There wasn't that many people doing it, and the learning out of it was real world. So they even did mock interviews set up. So we each had our own persona. So I was in charge of Wi-Fi, so I had to do Wi-Fi security, and I had to know everything about that. And then we each had to build a network for that. And then physically do it. So then build this network, and then one side of the class had to hack that network, and the other side had to build. It was amazing stuff. So to hear that's just awful.
Awful. It's absolutely shocking, really terrible, and sort of evil.
It is kind of evil. And not to say, I went to Swinburne, it was fantastic, and we did hands-on stuff as well, but I would rate...
Swinburne is one of the hands-on places, so that helps.
It does for sure. But going back to the future school, so I love the idea. I don't know, Peter Hutton did an amazing presentation using Lego. I've still got my Lego block here, actually.
Good. Love.
Which I thought was really cool. But what sort of struck me, and I had a chat to him briefly on the night about it, and I know he's got his new school now, so he's working 7 days a week. From the sounds of it, that crazy man.
Yeah.
But it sounds like he's loving it, so that's an important thing. But yeah, the funding aspect to things, and this will probably bring it back to BTC. But I think do you think that's a big hurdle for a lot of these? Because a lot of people have a lot of cool ideas to do.
Yeah.
To build new institutions, build new schools. We were lucky enough to get some funding for our school to build that STEAM center that we built. But it was just randomly through a philanthropist coming from America who donated Bitcoin to our school. Do you think that might be a big hurdle for programs like that? And could you see Bitcoin as a solution?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I mean, Bitcoin's going to become a solution for lots of things, right? It's just how and in what are the use cases? I think that's what people are still really waiting to see because it's been so volatile. People are kind of wanting, and they just see it as a trade, right? It's just people trading, they're very much so. In Australia, it's there's people trading and it's all, whatever. And also there's been a lot of losses and gains early from the early adopters. So it's all, it's I would say it's still an emerging space. You might think differently to that it's very kind of...
Well, there's one thing I'll interject with there, and it's the price is kind of meaningless. So there's something called hash rate, and the hash rate of the network is the power of the network. We've gone into this morning, actually. And I'll post a link to the current chart today. But basically, you have the price overlapped that's doing this going down, and the hash rate is at an all-time high today, like this. So something doesn't add up, right? So why would you put so much energy into something that has a low price? There's the issue, and you've probably seen with FTX and these centralized exchanges, it's manipulation of the price. So that's why it's not worth looking at that at all. What's important is this decentralized network that's never been hacked and never gone down. We've never built anything like that before in history. It's in some regard even better than the internet in terms of the power and what it can do with that. So it's a single source of truth that we've never had before.
Yeah.
It's really incredible.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
I mean,
And the fact that it's decentralized. I mean, I don't know what it means for Australia, and you need to tell me this, but I can 100% see how in other particular markets, and for instance, across, anywhere where you want to really, really verify sort of and trust the process of exchange and the kind of decentralization of it and it not having to go through central agencies or all of those things is very, very, very powerful.
hmm
In a country like Australia where we have and so that's very good for us in terms of global markets, obviously. But what do you see as the application for, say, Australia, where we do have kind of, trusted and verified systems of exchange?
yeah, if you can call them that.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting because you look at the exchanges here, and I've noticed like they're actually using metrics to block transactions, which is really gross. So you can't really trust them. So there's a lot of exchanges out there that want to sort of keep your money, if you want to call it that, or your, I like to think of it as energy transfer on their system and basically give you an IOU. And that's what's happening kind of across the board. There is stuff called like proof of what do they call it? Proof of reserves, POR, which is interesting, I suppose. But I think that I think exchanges are like a weak point. We don't need them. What we need is education and enough people upskilled to be their own bank. Unfortunately, like I was saying before, it kind of has to hit that pain point where people realize it. So whether that's, inflation, you probably noticed a lot of stuff going up in price recently here. It's a little bit of a solution to that in the long term. But I think more so security. So like you have this network that hasn't been hacked. Like if you look at the Optus hack, the Medicare hack, like all these things that just keep happening over and over again in Australia, they're mostly social engineering. So they're mostly just weak networks that probably shouldn't have the data they have in the first place. If we can get enough people upskilled to own their own data and be their own bank, and I think Bitcoin's sort of the jump off point for that. But more specifically,
that's really good.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot to that aspect and how we help people in Australia. There's a lot of people destitute in Australia now as well that could benefit from this type of education, and even being an entrepreneur, it means you can interact with anyone all over the world,
exactly.
Not just in Australia, sort of thing. So I think there's that aspect to it.
Yeah.
But in terms of funding things, do you think there would be because I mean there'll probably be a lot of Bitcoiners listening to this who think, wow, that's a really cool idea for a school. I'd like to help something like that. I know there's been a few projects around the world that they've done. Do you think that's something that we could pursue with the future school?
Is that I'd be very interested in that. Have you got examples of that in other parts of the world where schools have been funded?
Funded, yeah,
really?
For sure. Well, I mean, well, in Australia, so ours, for example. But now there has been so there's universities as well in the States. There's one there's one in Greece accepting tuition fees. That's the one that donated to us in the first place.
Really?
One in the UK. So I think Cambridge actually was doing BTC as well. But there's been education spaces funded, and I know a lot of third world spaces as well. So Bitcoin Beach is all the schools funded with that. There's schools in Africa, like I mentioned before. So there's a bunch, but there's a lot of documentation that you could look at with that. And what I really want to do is find out more about what's happening with the students.
Yeah.
That anecdote about the kids, learning how to save together on their own. I think it really reminds me of the school in the cloud and the kids in India.
That's right.
Creating their own school.
That's right.
So cool.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's one which is fund the school. The other is underwrite this sort of whole entrepreneurship kind of movement of students around the world and let them start working with each other. Because genuinely one of the things that will accelerate the kind of really getting to the wicked problems that we need to get to is going to be how we have this kind of global view, right? So we understand that there are very, very pressing, global issues, and they're very real for all of us in all our contexts now. And so you have to have the ability to act locally. And so this sort of global view is something that I think is very, very, very powerful, and particularly for students. It's the only way that we're going to deal with this kind of existential anxiety that students have at the moment, which is, manifesting itself in mental health issues and just general anxiety. Is the way to get beyond that is to give people agency and opportunities to do things. One of the things that I'm very, very interested in is, because we're all looking at micro-credentials now, so how do you micro-credential, people's learning as they go, so learning in the flow of kind of life and work. And so big platforms that are helping people do that globally, so that, again, you can compare and contrast skills and capabilities in a much more seamless way. And I'm very interested in how Bitcoin might accelerate that flow of learning around the world, and particularly to ensure that, lots and millions and millions and millions of more students and young people get access to that. Just the fact that there are 1.9 billion students that aren't back in school post-COVID, is a really, really, really serious issue. So again, we're going to have to think very quickly about how do those students get learning in a very different environment and a very different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, in my course, there's one of the parents, her kid's refusing to go. So he's 12. Yeah. So it's been 6 months, I think, at home. So I'm actually doing up an old laptop that I've got to get him onto Code Academy, because he's like just sitting at home, like not doing anything. I'm like, geez, that's really hard. And she's got to work, and she's studying her TAE so she can teach as well. But it's really rough, and I think there's a lot of kids out there like that. So you're right. If we could implement a system for that. So there's actually another program I'm working on called the School of Bitcoin. So check out the schoolofbitcoin.com. We've got a whole bunch of links and stuff on there.
Right.
But basically it's twofold, I suppose. So we're looking at creating a marketplace. Actually, there's a company called Open Course. It's a startup, but it's really incredible. So we're looking at partnering with them to build out. It's essentially, think Spotify for education. So Spotify, you can curate your lists of whatever it is, music. Yeah. But we want to do that for courses, so MOOCs, materials, like all of it, and make really clear learning pathways for specific things. Yeah. Obviously, we'll take each aspect of BTC and like whether that's security or Lightning or whatever it is, because it's, for the most part, that all that information sort of disjointed, like hence me wanting to try and write an accredited course for it. Yes. Kind of bring it all together. Yes,
exactly.
But it's stuff that's like all out there, and you want to go here. Like, where do you send people? So,
and curation is like what everybody needs more than anything in the world right now. Is really, really, really excellent curation of what they need to know about. Yeah.
Exactly. So with Open Course, we can curate stuff, and then people can star rate it, upvote it. Fantastic. What I want to do with it is integrate the Lightning Network so that the curators actually get paid in Bitcoin for their work as well. So on top of that, so that's one aspect. Yeah, that's brilliant. The other thing we're working on with the School of Bitcoin is something we're calling a DAISE, which is it's a bit of a wacky idea that I came up with. Yeah. So it's a decentralized autonomous education system. So the idea is you have only one didactic thing in the program, and that's financial literacy. Because none of us are financially literate. No one bothered to teach us in school. Don't even tell you what money is, where it comes from, nothing. And it's like, off you go and go and find a job. Yeah. For what reason? Oh, to find money? Okay, cool. No one told me what it is. So that's the only thing. And getting as close to truth as possible in that. So everyone gets a chance to upvote that, and it's all open source. We can all run through that. Then from there, hopefully you're financially literate, and then we've got a stacking pool for BTC. It's like a fund to actually fund learner projects. So no teachers, no students, only learners, because we're all learners, right?
We're all learners, exactly.
So once you're financially literate, you get a NFT certification. Yeah. NFT certification can be used to either upgrade the curriculum. So if you think it's all crap, that's awesome. Fix it, and then you can own a piece of it as well.
Wow.
Or if you think it's great, then you can apply to do project-based learning or problem-based learning, is like we like to call it in the network. So, all right, your financial, what problem do you want to solve now? And we've got a fund to actually fund that out.
Brilliant.
So that's the twofold we're doing with that. So far we've built out a lot of the curriculum and resources, kind of from a BTC and accounting perspective, because we have a really good accountant on our team as well. But we want to get more and more people and young people with their ideas into the network as well.
That's really good. That's really great. I love that. All of that is really useful. Because I think the idea, I mean, there's two ways, right? I mean, there's stuff that we just want to play with and have fun, and that's really good. Minecraft, go for it. And heaps of learning in that. But there are also, what are the real use cases for some of this, and how can it demonstrate these ability to, change the way people learn, or accelerate the way people are learning, or change the way that we're engaging with the planet, every single day. This is the kind of, and this is why, I listen to other podcasts as well about, Peter Diamandis and that whole crew on Moonshots and SU. And, there's a lot of, there's just so much chatter about who's going to make the big bucks out of what. And I think that is probably the most uninspiring thing right now for most people in the world, is who's going to make the most money out of something. And
who cares?
Exactly. Who cares when we've got existential issues that we need to all be kind of really putting our shoulders to the wheel around to create happy and thriving and healthy environments for us to live in and play in and relate in and grow up in. So I think this is the kind of really big question, and it's come off the back of all of the social media that, social media has been incredible and also not credible. And, I think the big issue, the pressing issue on everybody's minds is, will we learn from all of these use cases on all these different ways of all the technology that's been created, and will we use this learning as we enter the next wave, the next horizon of things like Bitcoin and NFTs, the whole environment.
Well, and I think sort of pursuing open source technology specifically and teaching that is kind of the way to go. Yeah. And I think open source philosophies for everything.
Yes.
So like what you've done in the past, really, like that's I think that's been like really a jump off point. And like even the New Work Order was like a real spark for me, because I'm like, yes, this is what we need to do basically for everything, and bring that into education. All right, switching gears a little bit. Before we get into Bitcoin, I know we haven't got much time left. It's been an hour already. What? Sorry for taking up so much of your time. That's crazy. So before we get into Bitcoin, the question that I'd like to sort of ask everybody is, like, did you question money? I guess I usually ask Bitcoiners before you heard about Bitcoin, but when was the first time you questioned money and what it is and where it comes from? If you have.
Always. So, there's three currencies at work in the world: money, love, and power. And so I grew up in the currency, I would say, of love. So I grew up, my parents helped set up Lifeline in Australia. They were very community-oriented people. They were conservationists before anybody was a conservationist. I was hugging trees at, 2. So I grew up in a very different environment, which is about social justice and how do you ensure that, the world is a place that's inclusive and equal for everyone. And of course, because of that, you have to know about how power works, because you have to go and lobby or advocate for change, and you have to get involved in policy. And so I did a heap of that as a very, very young person. And then money came a lot later in my life, because then I realized, wow, well, there's a lot of money from a lot of different sources, not actually only really from government, because we pay taxes. And again, we happen to live in a country where we have actually a pretty healthy tax base, and people do pay their taxes. And we as citizens, with our compulsory voting, actually make big decisions about where our taxes go, which is incredible. That's what democracy is about, right? So we're very fortunate that we're in that environment. But I think money then, the sources of money and how money flows became super, super interesting to me when I was sort of maybe in my 20s, because I was thinking, hang on, there's a lot of people that make money out of not doing very much, but mostly from moving money around, which is pretty interesting. So I'm over here working super, super, super hard, very long hours, very long days with people who are either, financially stressed or stretched or don't have enough money to do what they want to do. But over here, there's these people sitting around in suits, and they seem to be making a lot of money and going to very long lunches for like half a day. And I just saw very quickly that something very interesting about that, but which was probably wrong, what was wrong with it. But I also saw it as an opportunity to what does it look like if you get access to that money to use it for different purposes? And so I guess inevitably I got involved with corporates and with business people and with the idea of philanthropy particularly, and then impact investing, which has become much more of a model today, where you get a return on your investment so that you can recycle that money and just not give it away in one hit through philanthropy. So I've very much got involved in all the three currencies of life, as I call them: money, power, and love.
I like that.
And
I like that, yeah.
And money is incredibly interesting, particularly if it can be repurposed, redistributed, recycled, and also if you can get. And as I said, that simple example of giving money to kids at a very young age to do something quite specific and meaningful, and to learn and become entrepreneurial through that is incredibly powerful. And I think I had, like many women as well, a really unhealthy relationship with money, in the sense of, relying on other people, or that very huge sense of insecurity because of money and relying on other people. I used to run female entrepreneurship workshops with boot camps, actually, at FIA. That was one of the streams of work that we did, and we always had a session on money. It always went for 10 times the amount of time it was meant to go for in the boot camp.
Yeah, right.
And everyone, the women, young women particularly, were talking about, and I resonated with all of it, was relationship with money, in relation to relationships, in relationship to parents, in relationship to children. Just incredibly complex and complicated.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be, right? It should be probably the easiest and most simple thing that people interact with, and it should be fair. That's the difference. So I think the system that we've kind of grown up with, and the legacy financial system, it's not very fair. And even like the tax system, like I prefer to pay more taxes if I could, if I knew where they were going, and if I could see in real time where they were going. But we don't have that. We have a debt black hole, which is like, excuse me, we could build this tomorrow afternoon. Why are we not watching where this goes in real time on the blockchain? Like this could be done, right? I want to fund that school. I want to fund this project, and I want my money to go to that. But no, we don't have that.
Yeah.
So I think that's one aspect that's gonna change rapidly with this technology, and I think it's gonna be awesome once it does. There's going to be a few fat cats like the people you mentioned that won't be happy, but that's that's all right. I think that's fair. But that's really interesting with the conversations with women specifically and finance. They've found a lot of anxiety around it, and wasn't something to pursue, would you say?
Well,
Like
not
that's sort of the
something that
mindset?
a lot of people felt they had power over because of a lot of
Yes.
socialization
Powerless.
over many,
Hmm.
many, many, intergenerational socialization around women and money and also lack of knowledge. Like, as you know, so much of this comes back to knowledge. We now know
Hmm.
that actually in most developing economies and even in developed economies, if you give a woman $1, it is four times at least it benefits four people immediately, but you get a kind of a 10x return. So women, they've done all the research. Men will go and spend money, at the races or at the pub or whatever. Women will go and spend money on children, on their children,
Yep.
and there's
Yeah.
an
Right.
immediate reinvestment. They won't spend
Yeah.
it on themselves. The last thing they do is spend it on themselves. So that's why, the first microfinance programs around the world, the money went directly into the women's pockets, directly to women.
Yeah.
The ones that Muhammad Yunus set up, they were into women and women's collectives. Because the other thing was that women were much more collectivist, so they immediately pooled their money. So every week in any one of those sewing collectives in a small part of India, there would be a part of the money that would be put aside. So if anybody needed a new fridge or some school uniforms for their kids or some books, there was always this pool of money that they'd all put into where they could redistribute based on a kind of a collective view of what was needed. So women, although women have this fear and barrier and have been actually excluded from the monetary system in many, many ways over, thousands and thousands of years, actually they're the best distributors and redistributors and recyclers, and get the best
Mm.
return on investment is with women.
That's really interesting. So yeah, like for the most part around the world, not so much Australia, I suppose, but other countries like India, it's permission based. Would you say?
Permission.
Yeah. So you have to have permission to be allowed to.
To get access to money. Yeah, but in our case, it's socialization, which can be just as damaging and just as powerful. Or the sense that you're no good with money because you're a woman. That was a very, very, very strong until very recently. That's been a very strong messaging to generations and generations of women. So women entrepreneurs, because of that and because of the socialization, get, only 1 or 2% of the sort of funding that's available from VCs, for instance, for startups. It's the hurdles they have to jump through are much, much, much higher because of this socialization that men have also about women and money.
Interesting. Well, I think that's where Bitcoin could definitely help. Like, so having, maybe not even just in Australia, but across the world. I think that, like, because Bitcoin's permissionless, right? Like, no one has to give you permission to plug into the network.
Exactly, it levels
it's
the
for
playing
everybody,
field.
completely across the board. That's such a good point. I think going back to the $20 boss idea, I think that would be such a cool project as like an international project to do specifically with BTC, and say, so like you're not even giving it to mums and dads or whatever, directly to the kids who want to participate and go, what business do you want to start with this, or what problem do you want to solve? So that's kind of my thinking with the decentralized autonomous education system. That's really cool. That's a lot to think about, Jan. That's great. So with that, do you own any Bitcoin? That was the question I was leading up to.
Just before I came on here, I'd signed up to Amber.
Oh, wicked. Good work. So Amber's a pretty cool tool.
I did own some Bitcoin early. You know how I said that there were some early, we were early adopters about 2016, maybe 17. I can't remember. Nice. We put money and lost it all. And we put too much in and lost too much. But the sort of family did, so it was fine. But so my daughter, which I'm very pleased with, is like the NFT specialist in the family, which is great. Cool. To that point about, she said, I'm not going to be disempowered in this system, in this financial system, which I have been in the last financial system, the 20th century one. And so she has been all over it and got herself hugely educated, and I'm super happy about that. But I haven't had any Bitcoin for a while, but because of because of you and talking about you, I thought I was going to get a bit of Amber and see what
Well,
happens.
Amber's a pretty cool tool. It lets you DCA, so
Yeah.
dollar cost average. So you can do like $5 a month if
Yeah.
you want,
Yeah.
and set and forget it,
Yeah.
and it just
That's
does
what
it
I've,
for you.
that's
It's
what
pretty.
I've done.
It's pretty. Oh, awesome! That's really. Did you use the code?
Yeah.
Oh, wicked! All right, you'll get $8, I think, for free. So that's really good. That's awesome with your daughter. So she's doing NFTs. Has she looked at stacks?
I don't know, probably. Actually, I think she has, actually. I think she's, now that you say that, I definitely feel like she's mentioned that and spoken about that.
Because they're pretty cool, and they're building like NFT infrastructure on top of Bitcoin specifically. So you've got competing stuff, so like Solana and Ethereum that are what's called proof of stake. So when I was talking about that hash rate, they haven't got that. So there's no guarantee they'll be around for the next couple of years, whereas Bitcoin's guaranteed to be here until 2140. So we'll all be dead when by that date.
2140. I think
2140,
Ethereum might have been what we went in on early, maybe.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
You were
It
right.
looks very similar to Bitcoin. It has similar characteristics, but it's not Bitcoin.
I actually can't remember because it was pre-pandemic and I can't remember anything
I know what you mean.
BC, before COVID, I can't remember
staying in your house.
What was that like before that? BC.
Exactly. Well, that's so cool. So so you're on the app. So the next step for you would probably be like a hardware wallet, and that's basically to keep it secure offline, and then from there building a node. And there's a whole bunch of learning materials that you can go along with. But if you want to jump on the School of Bitcoin, we've kind of got all those built out, so you can. It's all free. You can just jump on and have a look. We are thinking of doing. In fact, what you just said with the 2017 cycle and losing money, what we were thinking, and I'll run this past you, what you think about it. So we're thinking of doing an open framework where basically there's like a 4-year cycle. It's called the halvening. So basically at the end of 4 years, you have the difficulty rate for mining goes up. So that's when you see these crazy spikes in the price. It's about 6 months after. You'll see it go nuts. And then it's all in the news. The newspaper's like, we don't know why. Like, why is this happening again? Oh, my God. And then it's the worst thing in the world again, a year later sort of thing. And it's happened again and again and again. You can just follow the trend and watch it going up and down with that. So the halving it is basically every 4 years ish. So you think of the blockchain as like a big clock. So what I'm thinking is of doing a 4-year course. So to run people through
that
a whole cycle.
Yeah.
So instead of them sort of panic selling and going, oh no, the sky's falling, because they don't have the knowledge from before. So like kind of holding their hand and saying, no, it's all right, guys, you can learn as you go through this cycle. So we've got, I think it's about 2 years out now, or just under.
Amazing.
To the next one. So I think I'm gonna launch that as well. But I've got too many things going on. So.
That's really good though. I think the learning, you've got so many things. I think the learning is so important though. Like it's really, really, really important, the education piece, as much as possible. I think it's really good. I think it's great.
For everything.
Because everyone's, I know my daughter's sort of done directed learning on this. I don't know what else she's doing. Like I don't know if she's in any clubs or whatever, but I feel like she did a lot of self-directed learning and maybe some short courses. But, how would you know really what you were, learning?
Getting into? Well, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, like that. The same for me for the most part for all this sort of stuff. So my background's network engineering, so it's obviously the two sort of marry up, I suppose.
Very well for you.
But for the most part, like it's
for the
it's
normal
all just
hunter as well. It's like,
yeah.
There's
a lot of
really
stuff
complex.
to learn.
It's a lot to know, and it will be. And again, that's why I'm super keen that as soon as the youngest that children and young people can be just exploring these things with no risk, is going to be the most interesting for them.
Yeah, there's the risk aspect, I suppose. I think the thing is to sort of separate out crypto and that's like all these thousands of things that kind of look like Bitcoin and Bitcoin. Not to say they're not building fun, interesting, cool things like on the, and I think of them as like test nets.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, this is great, that's awesome, cool, yeah, develop that. Don't put all your money into that because that's high risk.
Yeah.
Whereas the Bitcoin network, as hopefully you've kind of learned through this podcast, is going to be around for a very long time, and the hash rate's never been hacked. Like it's really risk free in terms of not price, but in terms of security specifically. And it's two very different things. But
that's great.
Thanks so much for doing this, Jen. This has been awesome.
It's been so interesting. I've learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's awesome.
I've got so much more to learn on all these new currencies. I'm going to have to add to my currencies of life. I'm going to have to say, love, power, and Bitcoin instead of money.
I love that.
I love that for sure. At work in the world. Anyway, I think we'll have to look at. I'm super excited for that Future School project as well. So if there's any way that I can help support that, thank you,
with the BTC network or not, like just sing out, because I think it's really, really important for all of Victoria. Really, like we need it desperately.
All the world,
all of Australia really
needs it as well.
The world needs it. Absolutely. Now, what's the best places for people to find you?
Just
like
on LinkedIn and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Twitter, although I may leave the Twitterverse soon. I don't know.
Mastodon? Yeah.
I'm just literally thinking about it.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I'm pretty low key actually. I don't try to be on too many platforms these days. I'm very easily distracted, and so I just have to manage my distractions.
Fair enough. LinkedIn's probably the spot for that.
Yeah, it's very, if I get near TikTok, like whole weeks of my life can disappear without me knowing. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it's all good. Great to chat. Really
awesome.
glad we got to catch
we'll have
up
to do
at
this
last.
again sometime.
Yeah.
Definitely. We'll have to do another one. I want to get Peter on for an app as well. So
definitely.
Maybe I can get you both on.
Yeah, that'd be fun. We would love that.
Awesome. Thanks again, Jen.